Hello, Councilman Rasmussen here, coming to you with the second video in what I'm calling my budget conversation series. The idea here is to create a number of shorter videos that go deep in talking about one of the sort of the big questions, the big issues that the town wrestles with as part of our setting our budget, and ultimately that impacts the things like the tax rate and the operations of our community. So each one of these videos is going to just delve into one of those major items. This one I want to spend time talking about our pension system and some of our pension obligations, because this is a big issue that has, especially in the last 2 years, has been a big topic of conversation among the members of council, and it's a big piece of what is driving the large tax increase that we've had to do this year. So I think most folks have an idea of what a pension is. A pension is a defined benefit plan that a business or a community puts in place for their workers to make sure that they are taken care of when they get to retirement age. There's actually a couple of pieces to this. There's the pension, which is, ideally that's like the money that people receive. It's kind of like Social Security or an additional type of system like that. There's also the healthcare benefits that are part of those sort of guaranteed healthcare benefits over the time. Most communities have some sort of pension system and healthcare benefits. Smyrna's no different. But a number of years ago, back in 2015, the decision was made, started really implementing in 2016. Some changes were made to this system. So for a long time, the town ran its own pension system. And actually, in fact, we had two of them. We had one for the police department and one for all the other municipal employees. Not every municipal employee is part of the pension system, but the vast majority of our employees are. And so for years and years, the town ran its pension system, and every year, as part of our budgeting process, would make a contribution to that pension system to put money aside for the long-term liabilities, the costs of making sure that people get the benefits that they signed up for. The reason why you do that is you pay over time, and then interest accrues, or in this case, investment returns accrue on that money you put in. So it grows right along with the people when they're working. If you make a small contribution every year while somebody is working, by the time they retire, you've contributed enough money to guarantee their payments for the rest of their life, right? So ideally, you put in a little bit every year, and then compounding interest on that, or compounding returns on that, helps that number grow into a much, much larger number. Same thing that applies if you have a 401k or an IRA or other saving systems that can allow you to do this. 529 plans if you're saving for college educations and stuff like that, like my family is. So the town operated their own for a long time until a decision was made. My understanding is back in about 2015 to move from having the town's independent plan to moving to some of the larger state plans. So there's a county municipal police officers plan, and there's a state pension systems. And the decision was made to transfer our employees into those bigger plans because they have lower costs to operate those plans. They balance out risk a little bit better. The bigger the pool, the more people in the plan, the better it is, or easier it is to plan for ups and downs and those things like that. So the issue is that the town didn't take every single person and every single dollar that we have and put it into those new pension systems. We maintained the people who wanted to stay on the plan, or the people who'd already gone through our system and had retired, became on what we know as our legacy pension plans. Those new pension plans that we moved to in 2016 have requirements that if you want to participate, you have to put in all of the money that is required every single year to participate. Unfortunately, the legacy pension plans that the town continues to maintain, they didn't have that same requirement because they're our plans. And there's lots of finger pointing about how and when the exact decisions were made. But what basically happened is when the town moved to most people into the county, municipal, and state plans, we stopped putting money into our legacy pension system. Not 100% right away. The number went down and got a little bit lower, and over the course of about 2 years, it dropped down to zero. At the time, we needed to put about $400,000 a year into that legacy pension system, and it had a plan of about 20 years that we needed to continue to be making those deposits to fully fund that system so that everybody who stayed in that would have the guaranteed benefits that they were that they have been told by the town they're going to get. When we decided not to do that, it doesn't change how much money we're on the hook for paying. We have to pay those pensions. So by paying $400,000 a year over 20 years, we're paying a little bit because compounding interest is going to turn that little bit into a lot after that 20-year period of time. If we don't pay that in, we still have to pay that lot at the end, right? And we don't want to continue to have to pay it. If it's far better to make a small contribution and let that investment grow over time so that by the time all of the people who are in that plan retire, we don't have to be putting more money into that system and it self-sustains itself. When we chose not to continue doing that in the 2016 budget was the first year that this begins being cut, that gap got bigger, or that contribution that was here didn't happen, right? Now that we get over here, about 8 years later, now instead of putting in $400,000 to get to that big number at the end, we now need to put in $1 million a year for the next 13 years to fully fund that pension system. That's an additional $5 million in costs that the town now has to make up. If we don't do this now, by the time we get to actually having to pay out all of that money for the rest of those people's lives, the numbers, it's hard to truly determine it, but the numbers, projections that we've seen seem like $1.5, $1.7 million a year. So that $1 million gets even bigger if we don't do this, and it sustains for a very, very, very long time. That's the reason why you pre-fund a pension system. If you don't pre-fund that pension system and you get further and further behind, your ultimate costs to people are going to be even higher. So right now, part of our pension or part of our budget conversation is, 10 cents of the budget increase that we had, or the tax increase we had to do this year, is just to start paying that pension system. But if we don't do that 10 cents this year, down the road, that may need to be 15, 16, 17 cents in order to pay it eventually. And right now, there's an end in sight. 10 cents right now over the next 13 years, but then that expense drops off for us. If we don't pay our pension system, that expense never goes away. It only gets lower as people, unfortunately, pass away and are no longer collecting benefits from that pension system. So it makes a lot of sense to do it up front when the number is small and stick with it. Unfortunately, a decision was made to stop funding that pension system, and we now have to live with the consequences of that, meaning that we have to either choose to begin funding it, pay more money now, or kick the can down the road and pay even more money further down. Not an easy decision. Certainly, I think more than anything, and the town council members agree on this, and this is a really tough thing, we want to meet the obligations that we have to the people who've served our community. Right? Our police officers, our staff, they're out there, they're the face of this community every single day. They're doing hard work, they're often underappreciated in so many ways. The last thing that those people should need to worry about is whether or not the town is going to meet its obligations to fund their pension. And the fact that we have people who have been sitting there, and this is in our audit every single year, this gap has been growing, that we haven't been putting that money away, I think would be very concerning if I was part of that pension system. And we need to stop doing that. But unfortunately, that made a big impact on the tax increase that we needed to make this year. So that change has been done. It's part of our new tax rate. We now have the resources available to us to fund that pension system at the level that it's supposed to be funded. There's a long way to go. We have about 13 years until the last person in that system is likely to retire from our community. But we want to make sure that the funds are there to guarantee them the benefits that they have. I will tell you that the healthcare portion of this is another big issue that the town has, and it's one that we really haven't wrestled with. The funding for that defined to pay for their health care over the years is not there. It's not. We've not been saving for that along the way like we should have with the pensions. There is some resources there, but we are even further behind on those healthcare pieces than we are on the actual pension payout obligations. That's another thing that we're going to need to figure out and tackle as we dig through these budget issues and figure out how do we start planning for those expenses, because in the end we have to guarantee the health care that we've told people that they're going to have. We have to make that as affordable for them as possible, and it's something that we're going to have to wrestle with as a community. Those decisions that happened years ago, we can't go back in time and change them. No one even can truly say what was done, when was done. Like I said, a lot of finger pointing is what I've heard. It doesn't matter. We have to meet our obligations to our community members and the people who serve our community. And so the changes that we made this year to begin funding those pensions are long overdue. They're expensive, but it would be far worse for our community if we waited any longer. So this is the second of the quick budget conversations that I'm doing. I'm going to try and get to all 4 of them today if I can, and as I think of more, I'll probably add them to the list. We still want to talk about utilities. We still want to talk about development. And in the first one, I talked a bit about the tax assessments versus tax rates, because that's a pretty complicated piece. So look for more videos. Again, please share these if you have folks who, you're having these conversations and you want to learn more about it. Reach out to me. You can find my email, my phone number. They're all on the town website. Most folks know where I work. A lot of folks know where I live. Happy to talk more about these things. Like I've said before, this is really complicated stuff. A lot of different moving pieces that drive the finances in our town. And the more that people know about it, the more that people care about it, the better our community is going to be. So, thank you very much. Look for more videos in these budget conversations. Take care.